Radhe Radhe everyone, and heartiest welcome to the day 2 of International Gita Festival. I'm so excited, and I hope you too are equally excited and looking forward to relish the nectar of Gita.
Radhe Radhe, Radhe Radhe Nidhi ji, Radhe Radhe everyone. So Nidhi ji, you know what is our agenda for today?
I would want to know that.
Yes. So our agenda for today will be recitation and reading. There will be some fun facts, some trivia questions, and special talk of the day by Khushi on the topic Gita's formula to deal with distractions.
Awesome.
And Nidhi ji, you know what? As you said yesterday that this topic is tailored for youth and kids, like for everybody, kids and youth. So I made my daughter sit for this topic.
Wow, that's an awesome decision, and I hope all of you have got your kids and the youngsters. Please bring them. If they are not coming, convince them, because this will be an awesome talk. Okay.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. अथ तृतीयोऽध्यायः कर्मयोगः अर्जुन उवाच ध्यायसि चेत् कर्मणस्ते मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन तत्किं कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच लोकेऽस्मिन् द्विविधा निष्ठा पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ ज्ञानयोगेन साङ्ख्यानां कर्मयोगेन योगिनां न कर्मणामनारम्भान् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते न च सन्न्यस्सनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठत्य कर्मकृत् कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वः प्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियैः कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विशिष्यते नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्म ज्यायो ह्यकर्मणः शरीरयात्रापि च ते न प्रसिद्ध्येद कर्मणः यज्ञात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तः सङ्गसमाचर सह यज्ञा प्रजा सृष्ट्वा पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन प्रसविष्यध्वम् एष गोस्त्विष्टकामधुक् देवान् भावयतानेन ते देवा भावयन्तु वः परस्परं भावयन्तः श्रेयः परमवाप्स्यथ इष्टान् भोगान् हि वो देवाः दास्यन्ते यज्ञभाविताः तैर्दत्तान् प्रदायैभ्यः यो भुङ्क्तेस्तेन एव सः यज्ञशिष्टाशिनः सन्तः मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः भुञ्जते ते त्वगं पापाः ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात् अन्नाद् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्यादन्न सम्भवः यज्ञाद् भवति पर्जन्यः यज्ञः कर्म समुद्भवः कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षरसमुद्भवम् तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्म नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम् एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयति हयः अगायुरिन्द्रिया रामः मोघं पार्थ स जीवति यस्त्वात्मरतिरेव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तस्य मानवः आत्मन्येव च सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते नैव तस्य कृतेनार्तः न कृतेनेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः तस्मादसक्तः सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो ह्याचरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पूरुषः कर्म नैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्तिता जनकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि यद्यदाचरति श्रेष्ठः तत्तदेवेतरो जनः स यत्प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तदनुवर्तते न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यम् त्रिषु लोकेषु किञ्चन नानवाप्तमवाप्तव्यम् वर्त एव च कर्मणि यदि ह्यहं न वर्तेयम् जातु कर्मण्यतन्द्रितः मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः उत्सीदेयुरिमे लोकाः न कुर्यां कर्म चेदहम् शङ्करस्य च कर्ता स्याम् उपहन्यामि मा प्रजाः सक्ता कर्मण्य विद्वांसः यथा कुर्वन्ति भारत कुर्याद् विद्वांस्तथा सक्तः चिकीर्षु लोकसङ्ग्रहम् न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत् अज्ञानां कर्म संगिनां जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्त समाचरन् प्रकृते क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकार विमूढात्मा कर्ताहमिति मन्यते तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो गुणकर्म विभागयोः गुणा गुणेषु वर्तन्ते इति मत्वा न सज्जते प्रकृते गुणसम्मूढाः सज्जन्ते गुणकर्मसु तान् कृत्स्नविदो मन्दान् कृत्स्नविन्न विचालयेत् मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यस्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतज्वरः ये मे मतमिदं नित्यम् अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानवाः श्रद्धावन्तो न सूयन्तः मुच्यन्ते तेऽपि कर्मभिः ये त्वे तदभ्यसूयन्तः नानुतिष्ठन्ति मे मतम् सर्वज्ञानविमूढांस्तान् विद्धि नष्टान् चेतसः सदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्याः प्रकृते ज्ञानवानपि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रह किं करिष्यति इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्नवशमागच्छेत् तौ हस्य परिपन्थिनौ श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो विगुणः परधर्मात् स्वनुष्ठितात् स्वधर्मे निधनं श्रेयः परधर्मो भयावहः अर्जुन उवाच अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापं चरति पूरुषः अनिचन्नपि वाष्णेय बलादिव नियोजितः श्रीभगवानुवाच काम एष क्रोध एषः रजोगुणसमुद्भवः महाशनो महापाप्मा विद्येनमिह वैरिणा धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निः यथादर्शो मलेन च यतोल्बेनावृतो गर्भः तथा तेनेदमावृतम् आवृतं ज्ञानमेतेन ज्ञानिनो नित्यवैरिणा कामरूपेण कौन्तेय दुष्पूरेणानलेन च इन्द्रियाणि मनो बुद्धिः अस्याधिष्ठानमुच्यते एतैर्विमोहयत्येषः ज्ञानमावृत्य देहिनम् तस्मात् त्वमिन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानं प्रजहिह्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम् इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धे परतस्तु सः एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मयोगो नाम तृतीयोऽध्यायः।
Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 3. Arjun said, O Janardhan, if you consider knowledge superior to action, then why do you ask me to wage this terrible war? My intellect is bewildered by your ambiguous advice. Please tell me decisively the one path by which I may attain the highest good. The Blessed Lord said, O sinless one, the two paths leading to enlightenment were previously explained by me. The path of knowledge for those inclined toward contemplation, and the path of work for those inclined towards action. One cannot achieve freedom from karmic reactions by merely abstaining from work, nor can one attain perfection of knowledge by mere physical renunciation. There is no one who can remain without action even for a moment. Indeed, all beings are compelled to act by their qualities born of material nature, the three gunas. Those who restrain the external organs of action while continuing to dwell on sense objects in the mind certainly delude themselves and ought to be called hypocrites. But those karmayogis who control their knowledge senses with the mind, O Arjuna, and engage the working senses in working without attachment are certainly superior. You should thus perform your prescribed Vedic duties, since action is superior to inaction. By ceasing activity, even your bodily maintenance will not be possible. Work must be done as a yajna, sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties without being attached to the results for the satisfaction of God. In the beginning of creation, Brahma created humankind along with duties and said, prosper in the performance of these yajnas, sacrifices, for they shall bestow upon you all you wish to achieve. By your sacrifices, the celestial gods will be pleased, and by cooperation between humans and the celestial gods, prosperity will reign for all. The celestial gods, being satisfied by the performance of sacrifice, will grant you all the desired necessities of life. But those who enjoy what is given to them without making offerings in return are verily thieves. The spiritually minded who eat food that is first offered in sacrifice are released from all kinds of sin. Others who cook food for their own enjoyment verily eat only sin. All living beings subsist on food, and food is produced by rains. Rains come from the performance of sacrifice, and sacrifice is produced by the performance of prescribed duties. The duties for human beings are described in the Vedas, and the Vedas are manifested by God Himself. Therefore, the all-pervading Lord is eternally present in acts of sacrifice.
O Parth, those who do not accept the responsibility in the cycle of sacrifice established by the Vedas are sinful. They live only for the delight of their senses. Indeed, their lives are in vain. But those who rejoice in the self, who are illuminated and fully satisfied in the self, for them there is no duty. Such self-realized souls have nothing to gain or lose either in discharging or renouncing their duties, nor do they need to depend on other living beings to fulfill their self-interest. Therefore, giving up attachment, perform actions as a matter of duty, for by working without being attached to the fruits, one attains the supreme. By performing the prescribed duties, King Janak and others attained perfection. You should also perform your work to set an example for the good of the world. Whatever actions great persons perform, common people follow. Whatever standards they set, all the world pursues. There is no duty for me to do all in the three worlds, O Parth, nor do I have anything to gain or attain. Yet I am engaged in the prescribed duties. For if I did not carefully perform the prescribed duties, O Parth, all men would follow my path in all respects. If I cease to perform prescribed actions, all these worlds would perish. I would be responsible for the pandemonium that would prevail and would thereby destroy the peace of the human race. As ignorant people perform their duties with attachment to the results, O scion of Bharat, so should the wise act without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path. The wise should not create discord in the intellect of ignorant people who are attached to the fruitative action by indulging them to stop work. Rather, by performing their duties in an enlightened manner, they should inspire the ignorant also to do their prescribed duties. All activities are carried out by the three modes of material nature, but in ignorance, the soul, deluded by false identification with the body, thinks itself to be the doer. O mighty armed Arjun, illumined person distinguish the soul as distinct from the gunas and karmas. They prescribe that it is only the gunas in the shape of the senses, mind, etc. that move amongst the gunas in the shape of object of perception. And thus they do not get entangled in them. Those who are deluded by the operation of gunas become attached to the results of their action. But the wise who understand this truth should not unsettle such ignorant people who know very little. Performing all works as an offering unto me, constantly meditate on me as supreme. Become free from the desires and selfishness, and with your mental grief departed fight. Those who abide by these teaching of mine with profound faith and free from cavil are released from the bondage of karma. But those who find faults with my teaching, being bereft of knowledge and devoid of discrimination, They disregard these principles and bring about their own ruin.
Even wise people act according to their nature, for all living beings are propelled by their natural tendencies. What will one gain by repression? The senses naturally experience attachment and aversion to all the sense objects, but do not be controlled by them, for they are waylayers and foes. It is far better to perform one's natural prescribed duty, though tinged with fault, than to perform another prescribed duty, though perfectly. In fact, it is preferable to die in the discharge of one's duty than to follow the path of another, which is fraught with danger. Arjuna asked, why is a person impelled to commit sinful act even unwillingly as if by force? O descendant of Vishnu, Krishna. The Supreme Lord said, it is lust alone which is born of contact with the mode of passion and later transformed into anger. Know this as the sinful, all-devouring enemy in the world. Just as a fire is covered by smoke, a mirror is masked by dust, and an embryo is concealed by the womb, similarly one's knowledge gets shrouded by desire. The knowledge of even the most discerning gets covered by this perpetual enemy in the form of insatiable desire, which is never satisfied and burned like fire, O son of Kunti. The senses, mind, and intellect are said to be breeding grounds of desire. Through them, it clouds one's knowledge and dilutes the embodied soul. Therefore, O best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning brings the senses under control and slay this enemy called desire, which is the embodiment of sin and destroys knowledge and realization. The senses are superior to the gross body, and superior to the senses is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect, and even beyond the intellect is the soul. Thus, knowing the soul to be superior to the material intellect, O mighty armed Arjun, subdue the self, senses, mind, and intellect by the self-strength of the soul, and kill this formidable enemy called lust.
Radhe Radhe everyone. Hope you are having a great time and enjoying the recitation and reading sessions by our selfless devotees. They have spent their time and effort and they have come and I really we feel so grateful for all the devotees here. And please don't forget to express your sentiments. I love Gita because this is very important. You may be inspiring many more people who are watching this show. So feel free, express your sentiments and thoughts. And I strongly recommend the best way for the thoughts to come in is just close your eyes, take a deep breath, let your, articulate in a way and just express it. So please take a moment and share your thoughts.
Yes, Nidhi, I agree. As Nidhi said, please feel free to post your comments on your experience. Nidhi, you and me are both enjoying this session together. Like I love hosting this together with you. And I'm sure the audience is loving the entire session as well. But, behind every successful event, there are so many selfless devotees involved. Their selfless seva, their time, their effort. So I take this opportunity to thank them all, our volunteers, our judges, thank them all, everybody who is directly or indirectly involved with this International Gita Festival for their time and effort.
A big shout out to all the volunteers. So,
Yay!
really, we are very grateful for you.
Yes, it is only because of their selfless seva that this has, this could have been possible. It is.
Kavita, this International Gita Festival, it just started with one thought. We were just contemplating, and then how it manifested, it is just a surprise. One by one, things started, coming up, and people started coming. They're showing their interest in volunteering. Oh my God. And then, how many contestants have participated?
How many?
Guess.
500?
700 plus. I'm
Wow.
like, we're so surprised. And
Wow.
that is also not from one country. It's from 7 countries. So we are very, very satisfied, and we are very grateful that they have come forward and, participated. And I would give a special, thank you to the parents of the kids who have motivated them to participate.
Nidhi ji, because you shared this information with me about 7 countries and 700 plus contestants, I would love to give you a gift.
Wow, I love gifts, always love gifts. Yeah, please, get it here.
So, my gift for you is today's trivia question.
No way. Please don't be so mean. Okay, anyway, I would love to try it. What is it?
Okay, so today's trivia question for everybody out here, it is, how much time did Lord Krishna take in completing the Gita?
Wow, that's too simple.
I repeat.
Isn't
Yep.
it simple?
How much time? Probably. Let me repeat it for those who didn't get it for the first time. How much time did Lord Krishna take in completing the Gita?
7 years. Oh, I'm not supposed to tell the answer. But I would encourage all the audience to post the answers if you know it.
Nidhi ji, no Wikipedia, okay? No finding the answers here and there. No cheating. I know why you are telling them. Don't cheat. No, you had to answer it by what you know. So please post your answers in the comment section below, and we will reveal the results after chapter 6 reading.
ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः ज्ञानकर्मसन्न्यासयोगः। श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगं प्रोक्तवानहमव्ययम् विवस्वान्मनवे प्राह मनुरिक्ष्वाकवे ब्रवीत् एवं परम्परा प्राप्तम् इमं राजर्षयो विदुः सकाले नेह महता योगो नष्टः परन्तप स एवायं मया तेद्य योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतदुत्तमम्। अर्जुन उवाच अपरं भवतो जन्म परं जन्म विवस्वतः कथमेतद्विजानीयाम् त्वमादौ प्रोक्तवानिति।
श्रीभगवानुवाच बहूनि मे व्यतीतानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेत्त परन्तप अजोऽपि सन्नव्ययात्मा भूतानामीश्वरोऽपि सन् प्रकृतिं स्वामधिष्ठाय सम्भवाम्यात्ममायया यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम् धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय सम्भवामि युगे युगे।
जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम् एवं यो वेति तत्त्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन वीतरागभयक्रोधाः मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्तथैव भजाम्यहम् मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः काङ्क्षन्तः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्त इह देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा।
चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्यकर्तारमव्ययम् न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्मफले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वैः पूर्वतरं कृतं किं कर्म किमकर्मेति कवयोऽप्यत्र मोहिताः तत्ते कर्म प्रवक्ष्यामि यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात्।
कर्मणो ह्यपि बोद्धव्यं च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोद्धव्यं गहना कर्मणो गतिः कर्मण्यकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्नकर्मकृत् यस्य सर्वे समारम्भाः कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं तमाहुः पण्डितं बुधाः त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः
निराशीर्यत चित्तात्मा त्यक्त सर्वपरिग्रहः शारीरं केवलं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम् यदृच्छया लाभसन्तुष्टः द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः समः सिद्धावसिद्धौ च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रवलीयते ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्म हविर् ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतम् ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यम् ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना
दैवमेवापरे यज्ञम् योगिनः पर्युपासते ब्रह्माज्ञावपरे यज्ञम् यज्ञेनैवोपजुह्वति श्रोत्रादीनिन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयानन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञाः योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संशितव्रताः
अपाने जुह्वति प्राणं प्राणे पानं तथा परे प्राणापानगतिरुत्वा प्राणायामपरायणाः अपरे नियताहाराः प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति सर्वेऽप्येते यज्ञविदः यज्ञशपितकल्मषाः यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजः यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम् नायं लोकोऽस्त्ययज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्यः पुरुषोत्तम एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वित्ता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धि तान् सर्वान् ज्ञात्वा विमोक्ष्यसे
श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्माखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यतो मयि अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमः सर्वं ज्ञानप्लवेनैव वृजिनं सन्तरिष्यसि
यथैदांसि समिद्धोऽग्निः भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा न हि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रमिह विद्यते तत्स्वयं योगसंसिद्धः कालेनात्मनि विन्दति श्रद्धावान् लभते ज्ञानं तत्परः संयतेन्द्रियः ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिम् अचिरेणाधिगच्छति अज्ञश्च श्रद्धदानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोकोऽस्ति न परः न सुखं संशयात्मनः योगसन्न्यस्तकर्माणं ज्ञानसञ्छिन्न संशयम् आत्मवन्तं न कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः चित्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत। ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे ज्ञानकर्मसन्न्यासयोगो नाम चतुर्थोऽध्यायः। हरिः ओम् श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
Chapter 4 Jnana Karma Sannyas Yoga, the Yoga of Knowledge and the Disciplines of Action. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna said, I taught this eternal science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, who passed it on to Manu, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. O subduer of enemies, the saintly kings thus received this science of yoga in a continuous tradition, but with the long passage of time, it was lost to the world. The same ancient knowledge of yoga, which is the supreme secret, I am today revealing unto you, because you are my friend, as well as my devotee, who can understand this transcendental wisdom. Arjun said, you were born much after Vivaswan. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? The Supreme Lord said, both you and I have had many births, O Arjun. You have forgotten them, while I remember them all, O Parantapa. Although I am unborn, the Lord of all living entities, and have an imperishable nature, yet I appear in this world by virtue of Yogamaya, my divine power. Whenever there is a decline in righteousness and an increase in unrighteousness, O Arjun, at that time I manifest myself on earth. To protect the righteous, to annihilate the wicked, and to re-establish the principles of dharma, I appear on this earth, age after age. Those who understand the divine nature of my birth and activities, O Arjun, upon leaving the body, do not have to take birth again, but come to my eternal abode. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, becoming fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they attained my divine love. In whatever way people surrender unto me, I reciprocate with them accordingly. Everyone follows my path, knowingly or unknowingly, O son of Pritha. In this world, those desiring success in material activities worship the celestial gods, since material rewards manifest quickly. The 4 categories of occupations were created by me according to people's qualities and activities. Although I am the creator of the system, know me to be the non-doer and eternal. Activities do not taint me, nor do I desire the fruits of action. One who knows me in this way is never bound by the karmic reactions of work. Knowing this truth, even seekers of liberation in ancient times performed actions. Therefore, following the footsteps of those ancient sages, you too should perform your duty. What is action and what is inaction? Even the wise are confused in determining this. Now I shall explain to you the secret of action, by knowing which you may free yourself from material bondage. You must understand the nature of all three recommended action, wrong action and inaction. The truth about these is profound and difficult to understand. Those who see action in inaction and inaction in action are truly wise amongst humans. Although performing all kinds of actions, they are yogis and masters of all their actions. The enlightened sages call those persons wise, whose every action is free from the desire for material pleasures, and who have burnt the reactions of work in the fire of divine knowledge. Such people, having given up attachment to the fruits of their actions, are always satisfied and not dependent on external things. Despite engaging in activities, they do not do anything at all. Free from expectations and the sense of ownership, with mind and intellect fully controlled, they incur no sin, even though performing action by one's body. Content with whatever gain comes of its own accord and free from envy, they are beyond the dualities of life. Being equipoised in success and failure, they are not bound by their actions, even while performing all kinds of activities.
They are released from the bondage of material attachments, and their intellect is established in divine knowledge. Since they perform all actions as a sacrifice to God, they are freed from all karmic reactions. For those who completely absorbed in God consciousness, the oblation is Brahman. The ladle with which it is offered is Brahman. The act of offering is Brahman. And the sacrificial fire is also Brahman. Such persons who view everything as God easily attain Him. Some yogis worship the celestial gods with material offerings unto them. Others worship perfectly, who offer the self as a sacrifice in the fire of supreme truth. Others offer hearing and other senses in the sacrificial fire of restraint. Still others offer sound and other objects of the senses as sacrifice in the fire of senses. Some, inspired by knowledge, offer the functions of all their senses and their life energy in the fire of the controlled mind. Some offer their wealth as sacrifice, while others offer severe austerities as sacrifice. Some practice the eightfold path of yogic practices, and yet others study the scriptures and cultivate knowledge as sacrifice while observing strict vows. Still others offer as sacrifice the outgoing breath in the incoming breath, while some offer the incoming breath into the outgoing breath. Some arduously practice pranayama and restrain the incoming and outgoing breaths, purely absorbed in the regulation of the life energy. Yet others curtail their food intake and offer the breath into the life energy as sacrifice. All these knowers of sacrifice are cleansed of their impurities as a result of such performances. Those who know the secret of sacrifice and engaging in it partake of its remnants that are like nectar, advance towards the absolute truth. O best of the Kurus, those who perform no sacrifice find no happiness either in this world or the next. All these different kinds of sacrifice have been described in the Vedas. Know them as originating from different types of work. This understanding cuts the knots of material bondage. O subduer of enemies, sacrifice performed in knowledge is superior to any mechanical material sacrifice. After all, O Parth, all sacrifices of work culminate in knowledge. Learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him with reverence, and render service unto him. Such an enlightened saint can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Following this path and having achieved enlightenment from a guru, O Arjun, you will no longer fall into delusion. In the light of that knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but parts of the Supreme and are within me. Even those who are considered the most immoral of all sinners can cross over this ocean of material existence by seating themselves in the boat of divine knowledge. As a kindled fire reduces wood to ashes, O Arjun, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions from material activities. In this world, there is nothing as purifying as divine knowledge. One who has attained purity of mind through prolonged practice of yoga receives such knowledge within the heart in due course of time. Those whose faith is deep and who have practiced controlling their mind and senses attain divine knowledge. Through such transcendental knowledge, they quickly attain everlasting supreme peace. But persons who possess neither faith nor knowledge and who are of doubting nature suffer a downfall. For the skeptical souls, there is no happiness either in this world or the next. O Arjun, actions do not bind those who have renounced karma in the fire of yoga, whose doubts have been dispelled by knowledge, and who are situated in knowledge of the self. Therefore, with the sword of knowledge, cut asunder the doubts that have risen in your heart. Ocean of Bharat, establish yourself in Karma Yoga. Arise, stand up, and take action.
Radhe Radhe, it's a privilege to share my learnings from Bhagavad Gita. Very recently, I started listening and attending sessions on Gita and realized that Gita is not a text to read in old age, rather, it's a life manual which needs to be read and understood in early stages of life. Gita touches all aspects of life and answers all the questions that we get day in and day out. Some of the important key takeaways for me is to do my work with utmost sincerity and not to focus on the result. This has helped me to enjoy the journey instead of worrying about the outcome, and have realized that whatever has happened is for good, whatever is happening is also for good, and whatever happens is also for good. And finally, the power of mind. The mind can be a friend and also the enemy of oneself. So it's decision left to us whether to elevate ourselves through the power of mind or to degrade. So far, these three are my takeaways. I'm still a student of Gita and still trying to learn and absorb the teachings from Gita. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Radhe Radhe.
अर्जुन उवाच सन्न्यासं कर्मणां कृष्ण पुनर्योगं च शंससि यच्छ्रेय एतयोरेकं तन्मे ब्रूहि सुनिश्चितम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच सन्न्यासः कर्मयोगश्च निःश्रेयसकरावुभौ तयोस्तु कर्म सन्न्यासात् कर्मयोगो विशिष्यते। ज्ञेयः स नित्यसन्न्यासी यो न द्वेष्टि न काङ्क्षति निर्द्वन्द्वो हि महाबाहो सुखं बन्धात् प्रमुच्यते। सांख्ययोगौ पृथग्बालाः प्रवदन्ति न पण्डिताः एकमप्यास्थितः सम्यग् उभयोर्विन्दते फलम्। यत् सांख्यैः प्राप्यते स्थानं तद्योगैरपि गम्यते। एकं सांख्यं च योगं च यः पश्यति स पश्यति। सन्न्यासस्तु महाबाहो दुःखमाप्तुमयोगतः योगयुक्तो मुनिर्ब्रह्मा न चिरेणाधिगच्छति। योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः सर्वभूतात्मा भूतात्मा कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते। नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित्। पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पृशन् जिघ्रन् अश्नन् गच्छन् श्वपन् श्वसन् प्रलपन् विसृजन् गृह्णन् उन्मिषन् निमिषन्नपि इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेषु वर्तन्त इति धारयन् ब्रह्मण्याताय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा। कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये। युक्तः कर्मफलं त्यक्त्वा शान्तिमाप्नोति नैष्ठिकीम्। अयुक्तः कामकारेण फले सक्तो निबध्यते। सर्वकर्माणि मनसा सन्न्यस्यास्ते सुखं वशी। नवद्वारे पुरे देहि नैव कुर्वन् न कारयन्। न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः। न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते। नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः। अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः। ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्। तद्बुद्धयस्तदात्मानः तन्निष्ठास्तत्परायणाः गच्छन्त्य पुनरावृत्तिम् ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषाः। विद्या विनय सम्पन्ने ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैव श्वपाके च पण्डिताः समदर्शिनः। इहैव तेर्जितः सर्गः येषां साम्ये स्थितं मनः। निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्माद् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थितः। न प्रहृष्येत् प्रियं प्राप्य नो द्विजेत् प्राप्य चाप्रियम्। स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढः ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः। बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा विन्दत्यात्मनि यत् सुखम्। स ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखमक्षयमश्नुते यहि संस्पर्शजा भोगाः दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधाः शक्नोति हैनयः सोढुम् प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवम् वेगम् स युक्तः स सुखी नरः योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामः तदान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ब्रह्मभूतोऽपि गच्छति लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः कामक्रोधवियुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् वर्तते विदितात्मनां स्पर्शान् कृत्वा बहिर्बाह्याम् चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवोः प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ यतेन्द्रियमनो बुद्धिः मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणः विगतेच्छाभयक्रोधः यः सदा मुक्त एव सः भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसाम् सर्वलोकमहेश्वरम् सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे धर्मसन्न्यासयोगो नाम पञ्चमोऽध्यायः।
Chapter 5 Karma Sannyas Yoga, the Yoga of Renunciation. Arjun said, O Shri Krishna, you praised Karma Sannyas, the path of renunciation of actions, and you also advised to do Karma Yoga, work with devotion. Please tell me decisively which of the two is more beneficial. The Supreme Lord said, both the path of Karma Sannyas, renunciation of actions, and Karma Yoga, working in devotion, lead to the supreme goal. But Karma Yoga is superior to Karma Sannyas. The Karma Yogis, who neither desire nor hate anything, should be considered always renounced. Free from all dualities, they are easily liberated from the bonds of material energy. Only the ignorant speak of Sankhya, renunciation of actions or Karma Sannyas, and Karma Yoga, work in devotion, as different. Those who are truly learned say that by applying ourselves to any one of these paths, we can achieve the results of both. The supreme state that is attained by means of Karma Sannyas is also attained by working in devotion. Hence, those who see Karma Sannyas and Karma Yoga to be identical truly see things as they are. Perfect renunciation, Karma Sannyas, is difficult to attain without performing work in devotion, Karma Yoga. O mighty armed Arjun, but the sage who is adept in Karma Yoga quickly attains the supreme. The Karma Yogis, who are of purified intellect and who control the mind and senses, see the soul of all souls in every living being. Though performing all kinds of actions, they are never entangled. Those steadfast in this Karma Yoga always think, I am not the doer, even while engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, moving, sleeping, breathing, speaking, excreting, and grasping, and opening or closing the eyes. With the light of divine knowledge, they see that it is only the material senses that are moving amongst their objects. Those who dedicate their actions to God, abandoning all attachment, remain untouched by sin, just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. The yogis, while giving up attachment, perform actions with their body, senses, mind, and intellect, only for the purpose of self-purification. Offering the results of all activities to God, the Karma Yogis attain everlasting peace, whereas those who, being impelled by their desires, work with a selfish motive, become entangled because they are attached to the fruits of their actions. The embodied beings who are self-controlled and detached reside happily in the city of 9 gates, free from thinking they are the doers or the cause of anything. Neither the sense of doership nor the nature of actions comes from God, nor does He create the fruits of actions. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature, gunas. The omnipresent God does not involve Himself in the sinful or virtuous deeds of anyone. The living entities are deluded because their inner knowledge is covered by ignorance.
But for those in whom this ignorance of the self is destroyed by divine knowledge, that knowledge reveals the supreme entity just as the sun illumines everything in daytime. Those whose intellect is fixed in God, who are wholly absorbed in God, with firm faith in Him as the supreme goal, such persons quickly reach the state from which there is no return, their sins having been dispelled by the light of knowledge. The truly learned with the eyes of divine knowledge see with equal vision a Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. Those whose minds are established in equality of vision conquer the cycle of birth and death in this very life. This possess the flawless qualities of God and are therefore seated in the absolute truth. Established in God, having a firm understanding of divine knowledge and not hampered by delusion, they neither rejoice in getting something pleasant nor grieve on experiencing the unpleasant. Those who are not attached to external sense pleasures realize divine bliss in the self. Being united with God through yoga, they experience unending happiness. The pleasures that arise from contact with sense objects, as worldly-minded people, are verily a source of misery. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise do not delight in them. Those persons are yogis who, before giving up the body, are able to check the forces of desire and anger, and they alone are happy. Those who are happy within themselves, enjoying the delight of God within, and are illumined by the inner light, such yogis are united with the Lord and are liberated from material existence. Those holy persons whose sins have been purged, whose doubts are annihilated, whose minds are disciplined, and who are devoted to the welfare of all beings, attain God and are liberated from material existence. For those sannyasis who have broken out of anger and lust through constant effort, who have subdued their mind and are self-realized, liberation from material existence is both here and hereafter. Shutting out all thoughts of external enjoyment with the gaze fixed on the space between the eyebrows, equalizing the flow of the incoming and outgoing breath in the nostrils, and thus controlling the senses, mind, and intellect, the sage who becomes free from desire and fear always lives in freedom. Having realized me as the enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all the worlds and the selfless friend of all living beings, my devotee attains peace.
Kavita, this must be the first time I listened to the whole, 4 or 5 chapters so attentively.
Wow.
Oh my God, I feel so ashamed that I had such shallow knowledge. But thank you, International Gita Festival. And I'm sure after this festival, a new Nidhi is going to emerge,
I'm sure all of us will emerge newly, Nidhi for sure.
Yes.
But for now, we have a special enactment and an interesting talk by Khushi on the topic of Gita's formula to deal with distractions.
Yay! I'm looking forward to listen to Khushi.
मन करो सुमिरन राधा है जीवन धन राधा श्याम हूँ स्वामिनी राधा जय जयति जयति राधा
Govinda bolo Hari Gopala bolo Govinda bolo Hari Gopala bolo
जित देखूं तित श्याममयी है जित देखूं तित श्याममयी है जित देखो तित श्याममयी है।
यदा संहर्ते चायं कूर्मोऽङ्गानि व सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता।
बसो मेरे नैनन में नंदलाल, बसो मेरे नैनन में नंदलाल। स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण, स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण।
Radhe Radhe everybody, my name is Krushi Malikarjun and I am a medical student in Washington University in St. Louis School of Medicine, and I'm so excited today to be presenting for the International Gita Festival, and this talk is going to be geared towards students. So it's going to be about the Gita, but it's also going to be about how the Gita applies to the lives of students. So basically, I'll just start by introducing myself first, and we also have a lot of participants that are joining us, so they will each introduce themselves as well. So like I said, my name is Kushi, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then I went to college at Harvard University and studied biology there. And then I subsequently got into medical school at the Washington University in St. Louis School of Medicine, and that's where I am right now. I'm a second-year medical student here. On the spiritual side of things, I've been teaching the Bhagavad Gita class for high schoolers for JK Yoga, which has now been on for more than a year, so almost a year and a half. So that's kind of my experience, and I've had a longer experience reading the Bhagavad Gita from Swami Mukundananda's commentary as well as other commentaries as well. So why don't we start off by having each of the participants introduce themselves. So if you guys could just say your name, where you're from, and what grade or area and education that you're in. So Pooja, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Radhe Radhe everyone. I'm Pooja. I'm a master's student studying in UK, but I'm currently residing in the UAE. So that's about me. Looking forward to the session.
Yeah, so Arushi, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Hi, I'm Arushi, and I'm from Ontario, Canada. I'm also in grade 10.
Great. Soham?
Hello, my name is Soham. I'm currently in 10th grade, and I'm living in North Carolina right now.
Great. So, Sumaid, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, again, Radhe Radhe everyone. My name is Sumaid Dadi. I'm a junior studying in North Carolina State University, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Okay, great. And last but not least, Mano?
Radhe Radhe everyone. My name is Mano Tadapudi, and I'm a 10th grader here in the Bay Area.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for coming today. And we're going to have a really good time trying to find out how we can develop focus and eliminate distractions. So you all are students, so this talk will be very practical for all of you. So the title of my talk is called Bhagavad Gita's Formula to Deal with Distractions. And it's part of the International Gita Festival done by JK Yoga. So first of all, what are some of the biggest distractors for students? And I have a nice infographic here that illustrates some of them. But why don't we go through, and if each of the participants could just unmute themselves and kind of, you can talk about this from a personal standpoint or from your friends, different things that you've seen. Whenever you go and you sit at your computer or your desk and you try to do a work, and you try to do work for 1 hour, an hour of work, what are the biggest distractors that you notice? You can go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Okay, I guess I'll start because this is something I go through very frequently too as a college student. So yeah, so I would say for me, some of the biggest distractions include things ranging from, you know, films, television, especially like you have like, especially in this decade, you have streaming services such as Netflix and Amazon Prime, and these are bound to be very distracting for the average student.
Great.
And of course, and also of course, there's online dating too.
Online dating, okay.
Online dating and video games, and even just you know, surfing the net.
Right. Okay. Great. How about anyone else want to talk about some distractions that they face?
Some distractions I face in my school right now, online especially, is if it's something you don't like, it's really easy to get distracted. Like I face problems like that a lot, and especially YouTube, which is probably one of the biggest distractions I have. Like you just want to put down something you're doing, like you don't really want to do it. You just want to like take a break from it and just watch some videos, and all those videos like just build up to hours and hours, and then you realize you just got distracted. That's one of the biggest distractions I have.
Great. So far we have like film streaming services like Netflix, YouTube. How about Arushi? I think you were going to speak.
Yeah, I think personally, worries about the future, like, oh, if I don't do this right, then like, how will that affect my future? And that puts a lot of pressure.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good one. Anxiety about the future. Great. How about Mano next?
Yeah, I think like as everyone said, you know, it's your phone, all the notifications going on. But for me personally, it's also just my mind wandering. I finally have a chance to put all the devices away and just work. And then all of a sudden I just start thinking about something random and I don't know how to control my focus back onto the assignment or essay.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Pooja, do you have anything to add?
Yes, for me personally, the apps, the social media apps, I keep switching from one app to the other, even though I don't have notifications, or even if I shut down the notifications from the entire settings, I still I just subconsciously just keeps going on to different apps, and yeah, that's the biggest distraction for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's certainly a good one. All of these are difficulties that I face as well. And I'm sure that probably anybody watching this has probably faced these difficulties at some point in their lives as well, or maybe even every single day. So thank you guys for sharing. Though that was a really good summary of some of the biggest distractions for students. So here I kind of just put that into words. So I would say, just from my own personal experience, whenever I had Facebook, now I don't have Facebook anymore, but social media is a huge distractor for students, right? We are so curious what other people are posting, all the vacations that other people take, everything, you know, they share about their day. We want to find out about other people. And social media can be a huge distraction for us. You know, you have the app on your phone, you log in, and you try to see what other people are doing. The other thing is Texting is obviously a very big distraction. And, you know, I've noticed that obviously if you have your notifications turned on and your phone buzzes or your phone beeps, that can totally take you away from whatever work you're doing at the moment. Even if you have your phone turned off or your ringer turned off, I found that I'm still distracted by text messages because, you know, I'm just thinking, oh, in the past 30 minutes, maybe someone has texted me. And then emails, right? I guess maybe not so much for students, but at least for young professionals, emails, you know, we get emails at all times of the day from our bosses, from our coworkers, giving us different tasks to do. And what does this all lead to, right? So this generates something called fatigue. What does fatigue mean? Anyone?
Tired, to state of being tired, burned out,
great,
and overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. That's a great adjective, right? So fatigue is the state of being tired. You're tired. You're overwhelmed. Okay, you feel a lack of motivation. All of these things lead to an inability to focus, lack of motivation, and more significantly, it's something called burnout, which Sumaid, you just mentioned burnout, right? Sumaid, what does burnout mean?
Just being like, tired, like not being able, like not having the energy to do even menial tasks such as chores.
Great. Yeah, that's a good definition. So burnout, generally when people think of burnout, they think of, okay, I used to be able to do this job, or I used to be able to study for this many hours, but now as a result of being tired all the time or just having a lack of motivation, you just can't study anymore, or you can't work anymore. Your mind just feels pretty much burned out, right? That's how it feels. And then the last one, which is really sad, but which is happening more and more nowadays, is depression. So in the past decade, and a little bit more than that, we have seen skyrocketing rates of depression, and even worse than that, suicide, especially among the youth in the West. And these are rates of depression and suicide that as a society we have never seen before. Not even when we were going through World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, we had never seen these levels of depression and suicide in our society. And of course, there's many scientists that postulate about the causes of such mass depression. But at least from my experience, what I've seen among myself, my friends, the reasons for depression and general burnout generally stem from social media. And it stems not only from the distraction that social media provides, but also from us always trying to compare ourselves to others. So great job, guys. Thanks so much for your input. These are
Kushi, can I add on to that?
Sure.
I read it somewhere where we all have a certain set of energy level, and every time we do something or think, it just goes into that. So every time you think or do something, it takes up your energy, right? So in the end, you're not able to use your energy productively for the thing you're supposed to be doing for. So so it's all about using our energy right and distributing it.
That's so true. Yeah, Pooja, that's a really good point, because we each have a limited amount of energy, right? No matter how much, no matter what good food you have and all of that, how much exercise you do, you still have a limited amount of energy at the end of the day. And if your mind is scattered in all these different directions, then you are not going to be able to spend that energy into the things that you need to focus on. So that was a really good point, Pooja. Thanks.
Actually, I wanted to add a quick thing. So we can think of our minds as like a boat or a ship, like in the sense that just like how a boat or a ship needs to be, okay, not a boat. How about, let's say, a horse. So just like how a horse needs rest, our brains need rest too. And also if you're traveling on a horse like they used to do before World War I, then you do not want the horse to just scatter and just go somewhere, take you to a destination you don't want to go.
Right. Yeah, Sumaid, that's a really good point. And you know what? We're going to talk about that, I think, on the next slide or the next few slides. There's a quote from the Bhagavad Gita that describes almost exactly what you're saying, Sumaid. So that was a really timely, good point. So, all right. So we already talked about this. How have you noticed distraction in your own life? And all the participants gave their different answers in terms of social media, Netflix, YouTube, etc., etc. And I'm sure that anyone watching this talk has probably experienced a very similar situation. They sit down to work, like this guy here you can see on the screen in this image. There's, they sit down to work, they sit down to write an essay, or they sit down to study for a test. And then off to the side, there's their cell phone right here, which is ringing all the time, which is people are sending them text messages. They're tempted to check Facebook, etc., etc. So I'm sure this is something we've all noticed, and it has led to a huge decrease in people's own fulfillment, their productivity, and it has led to very high levels of burnout, depression, and at the ultimate extreme, suicide. So this is the problem today, that this talk and this discussion that we're going to have here, this is the problem we are going to try to address. So, Sumaid, to your point about a boat or like a horse, kind of going in different directions, there's a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. And all these verses are taken from Swami Mukundananda's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, which all of you can find online for free. Every single verse, every single translation, and every single commentary you can find completely online for free. If you type in Holy Bhagavad Gita on Google, you'll find it. So how this talk is going to work is I have a lot of reflections in here from the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm going to read the Sanskrit portion of it, and then I'm going to call on one of the participants to read the translation, Swamiji's translation of that verse. So this verse is from the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And who knows how many chapters there are in the Bhagavad Gita?
18.
18 chapters, perfect. And the 2nd chapter is considered, it's the 2nd longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. The longest chapter is chapter 18, it's the last chapter. Chapter 2 is the 2nd longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. And it's thought to be a summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita. So almost all the different topics that you find later on in the Bhagavad Gita are somehow found in chapter 2. So this is a very important verse. So I'll read the Sanskrit. Indriyanam hicharatam yanmano nuvidiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavam ivambashi. So why don't we have Soham, why don't you read the translation for us?
Okay. Bhagavad Gita, verse 2.67. Just as a strong wind sweeps a boat off its charted course on the water, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can lead the intellect astray.
Great, thanks, Soham. So this basically talks about what distraction can do to us. So the Bhagavad Gita talks about many, many different topics, even what kind of food we should eat. And Sri Krishna has a lot of strong things to say about distraction. So Sri Krishna says here, just as a strong wind sweeps a boat off its charted course on the water, right? So, think if you're in the 15th or 16th century and you're sailing from Europe to America, like Christopher Columbus, right? You had a sailboat, a good old-fashioned sailboat. And, you're trying to head west. But there's a really strong wind that is pushing to the south. If that wind is pushing to the south, are you going to end up going to America? Probably not. You're probably going to end up in Africa or South America, right? So if you want to get to a certain place, let's say you have a certain career set for yourself, or you have a certain grade in a class that you want to get, or you want to make a certain amount of money, right? All of these things require focus, dedication, and concentration from ourselves. And if we have constant distraction, it's like the wind pushing a boat, right, into some other direction that it's not supposed to go. Sri Krishna says here, just how a strong wind sweeps a boat off of its course, in the same way, our senses can lead the mind and the intellect astray, right? So what are the senses? Well, there's taste, touch, hearing, etc. But specific to our topic today, we're talking about social media and cell phone usage and things like that, right? And that's also kind of a sense of ours. We're always kind of addicted to opening up our phone, checking out, who texted us, etc. And whenever we get addicted to technology, it can certainly lead our mind and intellect astray. So this is what Sri Krishna is saying here about distraction. Sri Krishna says we should shun distraction. We should completely eliminate distraction. Otherwise, we will not get to the place that we want to go to. All right. So this is another verse from the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, which is about meditation. And I'll read the Sanskrit verse. This is a very famous verse, by the way. Uttaredatmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha. And how about Mano? Can you read? Read the translation?
Yep. Elevate yourself through the power of your mind, and not degrade yourself, for the mind can be the friend and also the enemy of the self.
Great. So, and then that goes right along with the next verse, which is also from chapter 6. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. How about Pooja? Can you read the translation for this verse?
Yeah, sure. For those who have conquered the mind, it is their friend. For those who have failed to do so, the mind works like an enemy.
Great, thank you. So this is what the Bhagavad Gita has to say about our mind, right? So if you look at the first verse, verse 6.5, it says, how should we elevate ourselves in the world? We should elevate ourselves through the power of the mind. Okay? And it says the mind can be the friend or it can be the enemy of yourself. Okay? And then if you look at the next verse, verse 6, it says, for those who have conquered the mind, it is their friend. For those who have failed to do so, the mind becomes their enemy. So this is really relevant to what we're talking about now in terms of distractions. What does it mean? What do you guys think? Can anyone give an example here of how if you conquer your mind, it's your friend, but if you fail to conquer your mind, it's your enemy? Who can give me an example? Some example from their own lives where you feel like at some times your mind is your friend, but at other times it's your enemy.
I can actually. I'm not sure about my own life but I can give you an imagination.
Sure.
Imagine an example. So let's just say you're working on your homework or you're studying for a test.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're tempted to go wander wander online and search something that is not even related to what you're studying.
Right.
Now, to conquer your mind in this scenario means that you just completely fight the urge to browse.
Yes.
And then letting your mind becoming your enemy means you eventually succumb to the temptations.
Yes, great. Thanks so much, Sumit. That was a really good example. We all nowadays, we all have to work on laptops, right? So we're all on laptops doing our schoolwork. And, on our laptop, obviously there's our website, which we're trying to focus on, that has our schoolwork, right? But on the very next screen, there is, Google or YouTube or Facebook, and we're constantly getting distracted by that. If you eliminate the urge to browse on Google and search up some irrelevant topic, then your mind can be your friend. It can help you focus and concentrate. But if you succumb to that urge to go and browse the internet, your mind can be your greatest enemy because it will never let you get anything done. That was a great example, Sumit. Okay, so we talked about verses 5 and 6. So today I'm going to share a framework for how you can become the best possible worker that you can be and how you can reach your maximum potential by eliminating distractions in your life. So that's the main point of this talk is how can we eliminate distractions to become better students and better workers, right? So this framework is called Ready, Set, Go. That's the mnemonic, Ready, Set, Go. So it's very easy to remember. And it was taught to me initially when I was in college by Dr. Kevin Majors. And he is a Harvard Medical School psychiatrist. He has his own psychiatry practice. And he treats, patients with a variety of different conditions. But he also has done a lot of thinking about how we can work at our maximum, right? How we can work without burning out. How we can work without getting depressed. How we can make work exciting every single day. And he taught me this technique whenever I was in his mentorship program for a year. And to this day, it has been almost 3 years now since I left college. And I use this every single day of my life. Whenever I'm studying for medical school, whenever I'm submitting applications, whenever I have to write notes or anything like that, I use this technique and it has really accelerated the pace of my work. I used to be so distracted. I used to have my phone right next to me when I was working and someone would text me and I would immediately respond. I used to check Facebook at all times of the day. I used to have my email open so that whenever someone sent me an email, I would totally divert my attention into that. Whenever I started using this framework for working, it helped me to do what previously took me 10 hours of time to, for instance, get a piece of homework done in college. Now I'm able to do that same work in 2 to 3 hours, and I'm not exaggerating. That has definitely been my experience. So I'm going to teach you this framework today, and we're going to make it as interactive as possible. And I want you guys to learn this, and I want you to implement it in your own lives. So this framework is called the golden hour, right? So basically, the way that Dr. Majors suggests that you organize your work is that you organize it into hour-long blocks. So you work for an hour, and then you take a 10-minute break. And then you work for an hour, and then you take a 10-minute break. and then you work for an hour again, you take a 10-minute break, and you do this throughout your entire day. So instead of just sitting there and working for 5 hours at a time, you're splitting it up hour by hour, and you're getting to take breaks in between. So that's not all, though. The bigger part of how to work properly with this framework is to follow the 3 steps, which are very easy to remember. Ready, set, go. Okay, so just remember to keep that mnemonic in mind. Ready, set, go. Ready stands for reframe, and we'll talk about what reframing means. Set stands for settle the mind, and then go stands for setting a goal, a challenging goal, okay? So we'll talk about each of those steps in the next few slides, but briefly, reframing means you take some job or some piece of work or some test that you have to study for, and instead of thinking about it as a threat, instead of thinking about it as a threat, you think about it as an opportunity. So you transform the things that you previously thought were threats, you transform them into opportunities, opportunities to grow, okay? So that's what reframe means. And then ready, set, go. Set stands for settling the mind, okay? Settling the mind means doing meditation and calming the mind so it's not constantly distracted. And then lastly, goal setting means setting a challenging goal, because goals motivate us to work more, to learn more, to study more, okay? So that's the framework we're going to be following today. So I'll talk a little bit about reframing, and I have a lot of examples for all the participants here to kind of chime in, and I'm going to ask you guys how you would reframe these scenarios. These are common scenarios for students. Probably all of you have faced, all of you are in high school or college, and Pooja's in her master's, but all of you have faced these problems at some point in your life. And we're going to talk today about how you can reframe them, okay? So briefly, I'm going to talk about reframing. What is reframing? Reframing means there is some situation, some circumstance in your life that is very hard. It's very hard, very difficult. And initially, you think about that situation as a threat. A threat. A threat means, someone's trying to attack you. That's a threat, right? Like you're getting attacked by a bear. That's a threat. We want to take those situations and change them, reframe them. Instead of them being a threat, we can make them an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to become better, an opportunity to become a better student, an opportunity to build character, to build virtue, right? So that's what reframing means. So it's okay. I'm going to call on you guys, and it's okay if you don't have an answer. That's all right. But just try to answer how you would reframe these scenarios. So the first one, you have an essay due tomorrow. You're a high school student, and you have an essay due tomorrow that you have not worked at all on. Okay, so probably some of us have done this in the past, where you get an essay and it's assigned for 3 weeks later, but you don't work on it until the last day. That's called procrastination. And you only have a few hours left to write it up. So it's like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. You're really at the end of the line here. So let me call on one of the high schoolers. Arushi?
Sure.
So how would you reframe this situation, Arushi? So right now it's a threat. You think it's a threat. How would you change it from being a threat to being an opportunity?
I would make it a reminder, like a strong reminder to myself to plan my time efficiently and productively, so that I can not be put in such a stressful situation again. And
great. So learning from your mistakes.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I would try and plan how to go about the assignment or the essay, so that I can complete it in the least amount of time possible.
Okay, so you kind of create a plan. Okay. So those were really good points, Arushi. I would add to this one. So I would add that I could reframe it to a situation in which it's like a challenge. Like you have to run a race. Like you're at the end of a marathon, and you can build up a lot of adrenaline in yourself by facing this situation, and you can build confidence. Oh, I was able to write this essay in 3 hours because I had super focus, right? So instead of looking at it as an opportunity, instead of looking at it as a threat, right? Oh my gosh, I'm so scared. What am I going to get on this essay? I'm going to fail. I'm going to get, you know, a C or a D. Instead of looking at it as a threat, you can totally change that, and you can look at it as an opportunity to increase your writing power, your writing speed, increase your thinking power, increase your focus, right? So this can all become an opportunity and a challenge. Okay, so that was great. Thanks, Arushi. The next one. All right, so it's your first math test of the year. Let's say it's a calculus class, okay? It's your first calculus test of the year. Calculus is a very hard subject, right? And you know, you have the first test, and you studied pretty well for it, and you ended up getting a really bad grade. And this is kind of similar, now I realize, to the next example that I gave, which is, you know, for a history test you study so hard for, but you ended up not doing well. You got a bad grade. So let's combine these two scenarios. Just basically, you studied really hard for an exam, but you ended up getting a bad grade, right? As soon as you get that bad grade, how can you reframe that moment? So let me call on, let's see, Mano.
Yeah, I think I would take this as an opportunity to maybe, if the answers to the test are available, to see what I got wrong on the test so I can relearn those concepts, or even maybe talk to the teacher, you know, ask specific questions. Hey, I studied this. I was wondering why I didn't do as well as I hoped.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned a couple things. So number one, you can reframe it in terms of learning the content, right? So if you didn't know a certain formula or like the quadratic equation or something like that, then now you can learn that, right? So it's an opportunity to learn the content. And then the second thing you said was you can kind of talk to the teacher and find out how to study better in the future. Would that be a good suggestion? Yeah, so basically, you know, let's say you get a bad grade on the test. Maybe there's something you did wrong, right? Either you didn't study properly, or you didn't study enough, right? But you can use that as an opportunity to learn how to study better in the future. Maybe before you were just reading a textbook, and sometimes that's not good enough because that doesn't increase your memory powers. But let's say now, because of your failure, now you're able to develop more effective strategies of studying. Instead of just reading from a textbook, now you make flashcards. Now you make notes. Now you do practice questions. Now you study with your friend and you start quizzing each other. Those techniques are a lot more effective than just reading a textbook, right? Mano, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And I think also sometimes, I know personally speaking, some of my teachers, they have separate ways of, you know, making the tests or from specific content that we might not go through in class. So I think also even just talking with the teacher sometimes I've noticed helps, because they can give specific study skills that would help you excel in that test, rather than, you know, doing something that may work for one class but doesn't work for the other. I think that's...
Yeah, wow, that's a really good point. And that's a really practical point as well, right? In certain classes, I experienced this all through high school and college. Some teachers will give you very specific questions. You know, they come from this particular portion of the textbook, and you thought you were studying well, but you were actually studying all the stuff that they're not going to put on the test, right? So that's a really good point, Mano. Okay, let's go to the next situation here. So the next situation says, you have to give a speech to your classmates about George Washington, but you have never had any public speaking experience before, and you are very nervous, okay? So, you know, I once heard a statistic. It said that the thing, what do you guys think people are most afraid of in the world? What are people most afraid of? What is the scariest thing?
Public speaking.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever I first heard that question, what is the thing that people are most scared of? I initially thought it was death. I thought people were very scared of death. And it turns out I was not that wrong. That was the second most common fear that people had in the world, was the fear of dying. But to my astonishment, the number one most common fear was actually the fear of public speaking, right? And I'm sure we've all experienced this at some point. I certainly did. I did a lot of public speaking when I was in high school and college. And oh gosh, I mean, almost every time, even after I had a lot of experience, every time I got butterflies in my stomach and I got so nervous. So how would you guys reframe this? So let me call on Pooja for this one. How would you reframe this situation?
This situation reminds me of a similar kind that happened in my college days. So I was really nervous and I had a mental block, and I was just froze. I didn't say anything. So it was mostly because of the fear of what people would say, and it just kept going on, and I just kept overthinking. So actually, one technique that helps me is visualization, where I'm thinking. I make a picture that I am speaking and I'm doing really good, and that actually helps when you're having a picture and you're feeling calm and everything. It's like a practice ground for the real war or something.
Great. Yeah, that's great. So that's a very good way. Like if you're in this situation, then you learn that technique of visualization. In the future, whenever you're public speaking in the future, at that point, you'll be much better, right? So this is one way to reframe this situation. Does anybody else have any other ideas? How would they reframe this situation where you have to give a speech, but you've never given a speech in front of other people before and you're very nervous? How can you transfer this from a threat, right? How can you make it an opportunity instead of a threat?
Yeah, yes. Well, what you can consider doing is like just practice with people who you know very well, like practice speaking in front of them. Or you can also like in this, at least in the country I stay in, there's this thing called Toastmasters. I don't know if any of you heard of it. Toastmasters.
I've heard of Toastmasters.
Yeah, it's like a public speaking coaching class. It's like a public speaking class basically for amateurs. So I guess they can consider doing it too.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So, thinking of practical strategies, how you can get better at these situations in the future. Great. So these are all very good examples you guys are giving here of how you can reframe these topics. Remember, we're going from something that is a threat, like a bear that's attacking you, right? And how can you make that into an opportunity to improve? So next I'm going to call on Soham. So Soham, your chemistry teacher gave you 5 hours of homework one day. And, it's a topic that you're utterly not interested in. Let's say it's something like stoichiometry in chemistry, right? Now, you're just so not interested in that topic. It's just so boring for you. How can you reframe this situation from being a threat to being an opportunity?
Funny thing is, I did have chemistry class this year, and I found out that actually stoichiometry was actually not interesting. So I kind of have like personal experience with it. It's like one thing that helped me develop interest with this is you want to look at what do you want to do and like how you want, if you want to succeed at it. It's like number one goal people's lives and students is to get a good grade so you can just move on and forget about it because you did well in it. That's a good grade, but sometimes this is not enough motivation. So what I did personally, it might not work for you, but this is what I did. I talked to my teacher and asked him, and he's like, yes, I've seen this a lot, and like many students have this. So I just talked to him, and he just told me some helpful tips. So that's just the first step, is to talk to somebody that knows the topic very well, and just try to develop interest. If that doesn't work, all you have to do is just try to just do little bits by bits. So like the doctor of psychiatry, like you said, he says doing 1 hour segments. Try doing that. If you can't stay interested for a long time, that's fine. Just at least try to do a little bit by bit by bit. To try to reduce the amount of homework you get.
Great.
That's what I did. Try to stay interested in stoichiometry.
Right. I really like the last thing you said, which was, all right, you have 5 hours of homework, right? That's a lot. That's like more hours than you have usually when getting home from school. And you may have like tennis practice, and then you get home at 4 or 5 p.m. But obviously not now with the coronavirus, but usually, right? And how do you break up that work? And that's something you said that was really important. You take that 5 hours of homework and you break it up into smaller chunks, right? So you can kind of reframe it like that. Instead of it being a threat, 5 hours of homework, oh my gosh, you say, okay, I only have 1 hour of homework. I have to finish that. And then you start doing the rest of it, slowly, bit by bit. Great. Thanks, Soham. Thanks, everybody. So this was a good exercise in reframing. So anytime you have a negative circumstance in your life, a negative situation in your life, you should think, how can I positively reframe this? How can I take it from being a threat to becoming an opportunity and a challenge? How can I challenge myself? Okay. So next, remember, what is the mnemonic? Mano, what is the mnemonic?
Ready, set, go.
Perfect. Ready, set, go. Okay, so ready stands for, Mano?
Reframing.
Reframing. And then what is set? It's okay if you don't remember. It's settling your mind.
Settling the mind, correct.
Right. So now we will start talking about how to settle your mind. So that's the next step. So the first step is reframing whatever situation you're in. Okay. So I found a Bhagavad Gita verse that works really well for settling your mind. Okay. And it's from the second chapter, which, like we just talked about a couple minutes ago, is the longest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, kind of the summary of the Bhagavad Gita. And the verse says, Sukha dukke same kritva, labha labho jaya jayo, tato yuddhaya yujyasva, naivam papam avapshasi. So this is Sri Krishna saying this. So how about Arushi, can you read the translation?
Sure. Fight for the sake of duty, treating alike happiness and distress, loss and gain, victory and defeat. Fulfilling your responsibility in this way, you will never incur sin.
Great. This is one of my favorite verses from the Bhagavad Gita because it really helps me settle my mind, you know, because a lot of times we are thinking, okay, am I going to get a good grade on this, or am I going to get a bad grade on this? Am I going to win this basketball game? Am I going to lose? You know, something makes me happy, something makes me sad. But with all of this, you should try to be stable, right in the middle. So you should not be like too ecstatic, too happy, but you should also not be too distressed or depressed, right? You should kind of be stable in your life. And if you manage to become stable in this way, you will settle your mind, which is the next step in working hard, in working optimally. Okay. So set, ready, set, go. Ready stands for reframe. Set stands for settling the mind. Okay. So the best way to do this is through the practice of meditation. Okay. Now, I think probably all of you have probably heard of meditation before. You know, it's a pretty popular thing, obviously in Indian culture, but also in just in the West now as well. So, how many of you have meditated before? Just put your hand up. Okay, so almost all of you. So meditation is basically the act. If you kind of define it at its most basic level, what does meditation mean? Meditation means you are focusing your mind on one object or one image or one idea. And anything else, anything extraneous that comes into your mind, you are not giving any attention to it. So for instance, the type of meditation that we do in JK Yoga is meditation on the image of God, or on the stories, the leelas of God, okay? So when you meditate on God, you are focusing your mind on Sri Krishna, for example, okay? And when you focus your mind on Sri Krishna, you are paying attention to God, who is so beautiful and so amazing in every way, that extraneous things that come to your mind, maybe someone at school said something mean to you that day, maybe you had a fight with your brother or sister, and all of that can influence the way that you work, right? But if you take 5 minutes before you work to settle your mind and just calm your mind down, if you just close your eyes, breathe in and breathe out, just for a couple minutes, it can completely change the way that you work. And you'll be much happier, you'll be much more fulfilled, and you'll achieve far greater success than if you had not done this. So again, so how do you settle your mind? You settle your mind through meditation, praying to God, and then refocusing your mind on God, away from all the extraneous things that pop up. So there's a great Gita verse that talks about this, okay? I'll read the Sanskrit. Tatre kagram mana kritva yata chittendriya kriya upavishyasane yunjat yogam atma vishuddhaye samam kaya shiro grivam dharayam yahamo dharayan achalam stiraha sampreshya nasikagram swam dishaschanan anvalokayan. Okay, so how about we have let's see, I don't remember who hasn't read yet, but how about Sumaid? Why don't you read the translation for these two Bhagavad Gita verses?
Seated firmly on it, the yogi should strive to purify the mind by focusing it in meditation with one pointed concentration, controlling all thoughts and activities. You must hold the body, neck, and head firmly in a straight line and gaze at the tip of the nose without allowing the eyes to wander.
Great, thanks, Sumedh. So this Bhagavad Gita verse, one of the reasons I like it so much is from chapter 6, which we have had a lot of verses from chapter 6, by the way. Chapter 6 is about meditation and controlling your mind, okay? So these two verses, the reason why they're so important is because they're so practical. Some people think that the Bhagavad Gita is just a philosophical treatise and that it has no practical relevance in our lives. However, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita is a very practical manual for our life, okay? And this verse illustrates that perfectly. So what does Sri Krishna say here? Seated firmly, you have to hold your body, neck, and head firmly in a straight line, okay? So your posture is very important. And then there's another verse in this chapter, I think it's the next verse, I didn't put it in here, but it says you should focus on the incoming and the outgoing breath, okay? And also you should not allow your eyes to wander, so you should close your eyes. So I think it's best, why don't we just practice this just for 30 seconds here, not too long. But why doesn't everybody just sit up straight for a couple seconds, close your eyes, and then you can breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Okay, great. So we did that only for maybe 15 seconds, but how do you guys feel just after doing it for such a short time? How do you feel? Have you noticed any change from right before when you did that?
Yeah, I feel calmer, like more relaxed.
Arusha, you feel calmer, more relaxed? Anyone else?
I feel more relaxed. I think also there's like less strain on my eyes from the computer screen now.
Right. Yeah, that's a big point today nowadays, right? Okay, great. Yeah, so as you can see, we just did that literally for 15 seconds because, you know, we're in a presentation, so I don't want it to go for 3 minutes. But let's say before each hour of work that you did in one day, let's say you just sat down a couple minutes, just like literally 2 or 3 minutes. You just focus on your breath, thought about God, you say some prayers, and then you work. What effect do you think that is going to have on your efficiency, your productivity, and your fulfillment? Soham?
Okay, so one benefit I think is that focus, you'll have more focus. Because what I've felt right now, it's like your mind is calm. And when your mind is calm, your mind is less weak towards like distractions. So you can focus on things. If you do it like once every hour, your mind should be very calm and should be focusing on everything you do. You should be limiting the amount of distractions you have.
Great. Yep, that's really good. It'll limit the amount of distractions you have. Perfect. Anyone else? Pooja?
So I follow what JK Yoga offers, Roop Dhyan. So every time, so I try to keep practicing it every time. So it actually relaxes the entire state. So every time I do it, it's very I don't know how to express it, but it's I don't know how to explain this.
Yeah, okay. So Rupa Dhyana means focusing on the image of God, right? The Rupa of God, right? So yeah, for sure. Whenever you focus on God, you are focusing your mind on something, on the Supreme Lord, right? And that's the image of God is so beautiful and it's so astounding that all of the other thoughts that enter into your mind, all the other useless thoughts are very easy to push away. So that's great. So remember, ready, set, go. Okay, I'm gonna drill this into your mind. Ready stands for reframing. Set stands for settling your mind. And that means meditating for a little bit. Focus on it. Focus on an image of God. Focus on your breath, okay? Right before you work. That will really allow you to work better. And as Soham said, it will also enable you to get rid of the distractions. Okay, so let's move on now. Okay, so briefly, I do want to talk about our cell phones because probably as we've already mentioned in this talk so far, these are the weapons of mass distraction, right? Facebook, Twitter, I think that's Tumblr. I don't actually know these too well, but YouTube, right? These are all, whenever we go on our phones, and we have these apps just sitting there, and they are addictive, and they are built to be addictive, right? The people that make Facebook, the people that make Twitter, they have endless scrolling so that it's addictive. And basically, every time you scroll and you see something you like on one of these apps, it allows in your brain, there's a little dopamine spike, dopamine shoot, and that's an addictive thing. It's just like people who gamble and other vices. There's that kind of spike in dopamine that you feel, and that's the same thing that is actually replicated by these social media platforms. And that's not to say that social media platforms are all bad. Of course, I think they can be used for good in many ways. For example, with JK Yoga, that's the main way that we use to spread our messages. However, whenever you're trying to work, it is a huge distraction. And at least I did not realize this until I was halfway through college. I didn't realize how big a distraction my phone was when I was working. So from my own experience, what I do now is whenever I'm working, whenever I sit down to study, like for medical school, I take my phone and I put it in the other room. So you see that room back there? I put it over there on the sofa. So it's out of sight, out of mind. I can't see it. The ringer is off. I don't even think about it. And I can't tell you how much this has helped me ever since I started doing this, started putting my phone down, or even sometimes I just turn it off. I turn the whole phone off because I know if it's off, then there's less of an opportunity that I'm going to go and check it, right? So what do you guys think? Do you guys have any experiences about your phone being a distraction? Anyone want to share?
Yeah. Oh, I can go first. I think that especially my last semester, I think especially with everything being online right now, it's very easy to get distracted on your phone. But for last semester finals, when I was trying to study, I definitely know I did the same. I put my phone in another room, like underneath my bed, so that it'd be harder to get it if I really want to. And I think it really helped me just focus, because I know, like, I kind of used my, I'm not really willing to go under the bed and get it now. I'd rather just sit.
Exactly.
So I kind of used my laziness a little against me in that form.
Right.
So it definitely.
Yeah, you reframed it. You reframed your laziness, right? Okay. Anyone else want to add? Any experiences they've had with their cell phone? How about Sumaid? Do you have anything to add? Or
to be honest, though, like it's more or less the same as Manos, so I don't really have anything new to add.
Yeah, I sometimes have to hide my phone when I'm like doing like studies for a test, like from myself, because I'm very forgetful, so I'll like forget where I put it, and then I just hide it so then I can focus on my work and I completely forget about it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's a really good way to stop this distraction.
Actually, there's actually one strategy I found out like recently was like there's this mute option in my phone. I just turn that on whenever I'm doing something, like whenever I'm busy with something.
You can mute all the notifications. That's a really great way to do it. Yep.
I have something to add. I also downloaded an app recently, like it's called Focus Keeper, and it like uses something called the Pomodoro technique, and then it like helps you focus on your work. And I don't know what it is about like the ticking. It makes me like focus for a long time. I don't know why.
Huh.
Like I'll be able to focus for the 25 minutes time that they give you, and then they give you like a 5-minute break. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's very similar to this technique that we're talking about today. You set a timer for yourself. 1 hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I've heard of the Pomodoro technique before. You set a timer for yourself. And whenever you set a timer for yourself, it builds a lot of intensity. Great. Did anybody else have anything to add?
So there are these apps that gives, it tracks how much you used for a certain app or anything. And then when you're like checking finally, but maybe the end of the day, you go like, oh my God, 3 hours on this app. Why did I waste so much time? And it would just, you would rethink what you're doing with your time and how productively you can just use it otherwise. So that helps.
Yeah. Yes, that's really good. Like looking at screen time if you have an iPhone, Apple product, there's an app that you can look to see how much time you spend on all of the apps. So that's really good. So yeah, basically the basic thing is if you want to really focus better and you're noticing that you're distracted, chances are almost 75% of your distractions are coming from your cell phone. So if you find some way to just hide it, like several people here said they hid their phones when they're trying to work, that's a fantastic technique because we're all kind of naturally a little bit lazy, right? So we're not going to go underneath the bed and find our phone if we put it there, unless we really need to. Okay, fantastic. So moving on. The last part of the mnemonic, ready, set, go. Okay, go stands for setting goals. Okay, so there's a really good another mnemonic here. So I'm the mnemonic man, I guess. But there's a famous mnemonic here that I heard when I was in high school. I heard it when I was in college. This is the SMART technique to setting good goals. Okay, and briefly, I'm going to go through each letter of the acronym SMART, SMART. And we're going to go through how we can set good goals. Okay, so a goal should be S, specific, M, measurable, A, attainable, R, realistic, and T, time-bound. Okay, so Pooja, what does it mean to set a specific goal?
Let's say I have a lot of assignments to do, and it's more to do with narrowing down all of them, and then basically setting each time for each a certain work, and you're just briefing it out, and then you're breaking down the work for that assignment and being more focused on what all aspects need to be covered, and being more looking more into the detail of it.
Great. So why don't we take a specific example for this? So let's kind of gear towards high schoolers, okay? So let's say you have the hardest test of the year. It's the calculus final, okay? The calculus final, it's the end of the year, and it's the hardest test that you've ever had in your life. And now you have 1 week to study for it. So Pooja, how would you set a specific goal? You can just give a brief example. How would you set a specific goal for this test?
So I would look at the goal, the ultimate goal, what I want from the assignment or the test or whatsoever it is, and then I would just break it down each day, what I need to do, how I need to go about it, learn, so basically setting breaks as well. So that's very key to study and then allocate time for breaks, and then
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So being more specific. So it's not just, oh, I want to do well on the math test, right? Instead, you're saying, I want to get a 95% on the math test, okay? So that's a more specific goal. It's something concrete that you can, it's identifiable, okay? All right, next one, measurable, SMART. Remember, that's the mnemonic, SMART, S-M. M stands for measurable. How do you make a measurable goal? We kind of already talked about this. Mano, how would you make this goal? You're studying for a math test in 1 week, the hardest math test of the year. How would you set a measurable goal?
Well, I think, as Pooja said, starting from specific, if we get specific assignments like, okay, I want to be able to be confident with this specific problem, then you can measure it by saying, go about each assignment or anything that you want to review for that test. Okay, am I confident with this? Yes, then you can check that off. So I guess taking the small baby steps and making sure you finish this one assignment or you are confident with a specific concept.
Right. Yeah, so making a list of all the different assignments or different weak points that you have, and then checking them off. So you're measuring it, right? You're measuring what you have done. That's good. Okay, A stands for attainable. So Arushi, how do you set an attainable goal? What does attainable mean?
Like being realistic. Like you can't say that like I want to finish like the whole like say you have an extremely hard exam coming up. I want to finish all of like the content that needs to be studied. I want to finish it all in 1 day. Like that's really unrealistic. I would say break it down over the course of a few days if you have like not a lot of time, or if you have like a good few weeks, then break it down so you're not doing too much, but it's realistic and it's something you can achieve.
Great. Yeah, exactly. So you kind of combine the next two into one, right? Attainable and realistic, and they are very similar, right? So you said, for example, like on this test, let's say you're about like a B student, your average in the class is like 87%. And then on this final, you're like, I want to get a 98% or above on this exam. Is that a realistic goal? Maybe it is. If you study really hard, it could be realistic. But for a lot of people, that goal might just be out of reach, right? So you want to make sure it's a realistic goal, okay? And then attainable. It has to be possible. But at the same time, it should still be challenging. So it should not be too easy. It should still be challenging. So the way I think about it is, have you guys run the mile in school? Like the mile? You guys know what that is in high school, like running a mile? So it's basically, you run a mile around the track, right? And usually in high school, if you do cross country or track or other sports, they will take your time. So, I remember I was a slow runner, but when I got up to like an 8-minute mile, so I could run 1 mile in 8 minutes. That's pretty slow. Probably some of you can run it faster than me. But I like to think about it as, all right, my goal is I want to improve my best time by 2 seconds. Okay, does that make sense? So it's setting a goal which is challenging, but it is attainable. It is realistic. Okay, so like for instance, let's take that. So you're running the mile and you're getting mile times of 8 minutes, 8 minutes 30 seconds, like that. You say, okay, today I want to run the mile in 7 minutes and 55 seconds. So that's 5 seconds faster than my fastest time. So it's still attainable. It's not too hard, but it's still challenging. Okay, so that's the key to setting a good goal. And then there's one last thing. The T in the mnemonic SMART, S-M-A-R-T, right? T stands for time bound. Okay, so Soham, what does it mean to set a time bound goal?
Well, a goal that can be like met within a reasonable amount of time.
Okay, yeah, that's good. What about Soham? Do you have any ideas?
It kind of ties into what Arushi said earlier. She said that you don't really want to study for the entire test in one day.
Right.
But yeah, time bound. That means it's like you want to get that score by the day of the exam. You don't really want to. You don't really want to give the test. You really want to study for the test like the last 5 days you have. You really just want to give it a wide area so you have enough time for you to get it.
Great.
But you also don't want it to be too short that you rush to get it.
Great. That's perfect. Yeah. So you have to give yourself a deadline, right? And for instance, even in each hour that you work, if you set a timer for yourself, 1 hour, let's say, that's a pretty even number, right? That brings a level of intensity to your work that you have not had before. So I would highly suggest that if any of you are working and you're not setting timers for yourself, you should certainly set a timer for yourself, and it will definitely help you to work better. Okay, great. So now we talked about all 3 parts of the mnemonic. Remember, GO stands for goal, and it has to be SMART, SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Okay, so let's remember those. All right. So that's it for the talk. So today, as a conclusion, we talked about how the Gita can help us focus as students, as young professionals, right? And we specifically talked about several verses from the Bhagavad Gita dealing with distraction and how to control your mind. But we also talked about a technique called ready, set, go, reframing, settling the mind, and setting a goal for yourself. So if you can try to bring even just one thing that we said today into your own life, just one new thing, and into your own work schedule, into your own work habits, that can revolutionize the way that you work, and that can allow you to get a far greater amount of work done in the same amount of time that it previously took you, or in even less time. Okay, so yeah, thank you guys so much for participating today. And do you guys have any questions?
Not really. Well, yeah, I don't think.
Okay, I'll go for it. I have a question on let's say the thing is, when I do a certain work, I get immensely and like deeply into it, and I mean that's good, but then it kind of takes a lot of my time, and then I'm not absorbed. I mean, when I'm absorbed in doing my work, I'm not aware of the surroundings. So how do I have the balance of both when I'm focused as well as aware of the surroundings?
Yeah, wow, that's a good question, Pooja. So basically, Pooja's question is, sometimes when you're focused, you're so focused that you're not really aware of the surroundings, right? And actually, my first response to that is, I honestly think that's a good thing, to be so focused that you're not thinking about anything else. So it reminds me of a story in the Mahabharata where I think all of you have a baseline level of familiarity with the Mahabharata, but basically there's this character named Arjuna, who is one of the main characters in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita especially. And his teacher, Dronacharya, is teaching a class of students, okay? And he tells the students to get ready with a bow and arrow and take aim at the bird in the tree, okay? So there's a bird sitting in the tree, it's like a fake bird, and there's a bird sitting in the tree, and the Dronacharya tells the students to, get ready with your arrow and take aim, okay? So he calls each of the students up there one by one, and he asks them, what do you see? And one by one, the student says, oh, I see the sky, I see the clouds, I see the tree, I see the ground, I see all my friends. Almost all the students say that. And then Dronacharya calls Arjuna up, and he says, what do you see, Arjuna? Arjuna says, I see the eye of the bird. So he is so focused on his goal that he only sees that small part of his goal. He's so focused on that. And then Dronacharya tells him to shoot, and he shoots, and it hits exactly the eye of the bird. So I think that it's a good problem to have too much focus. But I understand your question. Your question is if you have too much focus, sometimes you can be oblivious to the world. And this depends on what you're doing. If you're studying for an exam, I think having maximum focus is a good thing. But let's say, in my circumstance, like I'm trying to be a doctor, right? I'm in medical school. So as a doctor, you have to be focused, but at the same time, you also have to be aware of your surroundings. Let's say you're doing a surgery. You have to be focused on the surgery. But let's say something is happening to another part of the body. You can't just be narrowly focused on like the gallbladder, but you're not seeing what's happening with some other part of the abdomen, right? So I'd say it depends on what you're doing, but generally more focus is better, especially if you're studying. However, depending on different people's jobs, you do have to have a balance between being narrowly focused on something, but also kind of being aware of your surroundings. And I think meditation is a great technique for that, because in some forms of meditation in all forms of meditation, you're focusing on, let's say, an image of God, right? Group Dhyan meditation. Whenever you're focusing on God, at the same time, there are a lot of other things coming in from the surroundings. There's different sounds. There's the sound of the air conditioner. There's the sound of people in the next room that are talking. There's a sound of, just like maybe someone's taking a shower in your dorm or something like that. There'll be sounds all over the place. But you have to become aware of those sounds so you know they exist. But you kind of, in your mind, you distance yourself from them. So it's developing focus, but also being aware of your surroundings, but it's still maintaining that sense of focus. So I think meditation is a good technique that can help us to both be focused, but also to be kind of aware of our surroundings. That's a good question, Pooja. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, actually, I have a quick question. Oh, yeah, you can go ahead.
All right, Arushi.
My question was, we know now how to make a really effective goal. How do we retain our motivation to achieve it?
Okay, wow, yeah, that's a really good question, and that I could give a whole lecture on that, right? That's a huge topic. Is how do we get motivated? Okay, so I guess there's a lot of techniques that people use to motivate themselves. Honestly, I think whenever I make a goal, even if it's something that I'm totally not interested in, whenever I make a goal, just the act of making a goal, writing it down, if you have a checklist or something or a planner, like I have this planner here that I buy every year, and I write down in it all my goals for the week, my goals for the day, everything I need to get done. And whenever I see it in there, I'm so motivated to finish it, just because I want to cross it off, So I think the act of setting a goal itself will really help with the motivation aspect. However, that's not always the case. So ultimately, motivation comes down to the why. Why are you working, right? So you have to think about why you are studying, why you are working, etc. So realizing why you're doing something will really help with motivation. Does that answer your question, Arushi?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and any other questions?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so but what I was gonna say is, so I remember what Rushi was saying about how at times we lose motivation to achieve our goal, but then so what I usually do is I usually think about the reward I'm gonna achieve. Like for example, there are a couple of there are times when classes in school can be boring, but then when you think about it, when you keep saying, what I do is I constantly tell myself that if I concentrate on this class a lot, then I'll earn more money. But at the same time, the problem is it's not really a problem, but the Bhagavad Gita says you should be detached from your rewards. So
Right.
what do I do in this regard? What do I do in this situation?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. So you're asking about the question of karma yoga. So there's a philosophy in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2 and chapter 3 called karma yoga. And that philosophy says that instead of being attached to the results of our actions, so how much money you're going to make, right? You should be attached to the action itself. So yeah, what you're bringing up is a good point. For a lot of people, sometimes when you think about the reward, oh, I want to get a certain grade on this test, I want to get 100% on this test. That can sometimes motivate you to study, but at the same time, it can also demotivate you. So it can make you anxious. It can make you so anxious that you're just paralyzed. I'm sure some of you have probably experienced this. So at that time, what the Bhagavad Gita says is the same kind of level of attention that you're giving to the result, you should give to Sri Krishna. You should focus on God, and you should do the same action with even more intensity, but you should do it for the sake of God. So I understand results can certainly be motivating, but in the Bhagavad Gita, what it says is, in order for us to not have anxiety, and in order for us to be karma yogis, right, we have to start devoting everything to God. So that means not being attached to the results of your actions. Okay, so this is going a little bit long here. So it's, let's see, I think we have time for one more. So Mano, did you have a question?
Yeah. So I think in our entire talk today, we talked about how to not get too excited or, too sad or anxious, but sometimes it can be really hard to find that, middle ground. So what is one tip to, try to balance yourself all the time?
Okay, great. That's a good question. So about anxiety and kind of distress, right? I guess in the Bhagavad Gita, it's kind of on the same topic that I just spoke about, which is karma yoga. So karma yoga, maybe some of you have heard of it before, but karma yoga basically means being unattached to the results of your actions, but being attached and intense in the action itself for the service of the Lord. Okay, so why this helps with anxiety is because generally when we get anxious about things, we get anxious about the results. So you're anxious if you're going to get into a good college, right? You're applying and everything, but you're so anxious. Oh my God, I'm so scared. Where am I going to go to college? Did I get a good enough SAT score? Are my grades high enough? But if you instead become unattached from the results of your actions, which means, all right, what college are you going to get into? And instead you use that same energy to focus on the actual application process itself, you can actually have less anxiety and you can have a better result. So that's kind of what I think the Bhagavad Gita says about that. Okay, so Radhe Radhe everybody, thank you so much for coming today, and thank you so much for all your great participation. I hope you learned something from this talk about how to eliminate distractions and to cultivate focus with lessons from the Bhagavad Gita.
All right. Yeah, thank you for your time, and good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Such a profound talk by Khushi. Kavita, I'm really, really impressed by him and the talk that he gave. But there's so much to digest, for me, I can't take so much at once. You know what Rishi Aurobindo quoted? The Bhagavad Gita is a true scripture of the human race, a living creation rather than a book. with a new message for every age and a new meaning for every civilization. We hope you all enjoyed and had a great experience. We want to hear from you. So, Kavita, what's the agenda for tomorrow?
So tomorrow we will be covering recitation and reading. Then in our special session tomorrow, the talk of the day is by JK Yoga Academy speaker Pritha, and the topic will be the art of mind management from Gita.
I love that topic, Kavita. You know what? I have got that book, The Art of Mind Management, written by Swamiji. It really has such, insights that has helped me in my life.
I agree, Nidhi. I do have that book, Nidhi, and the Swamiji's discourses on the art of mind management, which is conducted, they are all over YouTube, and they were such a huge hit. Such a huge hit. So I think we'll all have fun listening to that session by Pritha. That is all for today, Nidhi ji. I'm so sad to have.
Oh, the day has passed so fast. Huh?
Yes. But thank you all for attending, and see you all tomorrow for day 3 of International Gita Festival. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. Thank you.